What's good? Welcome back to the podcast. Now, today we're going to be touching on why sleep is the foundational pillar for your body transformation. Why it's just as important as your macros, your training, your supplements, and your recovery strategy. So, we're going to break down how sleep regulates key hormones like ghrelin, leptin, insulin, cortisol, testosterone, why poor sleep leads to much stronger cravings, worse food choices, and then more fat storage, less body fat loss. Then, how sleep affects your training, your muscle growth, and your CNS recovery. The link between sleep, stress resilience, and metabolic flexibility. And then finally, how to improve your sleep so it becomes basically your secret weapon, not your bottleneck, not the rate limiting factor that's going to be holding back all of your progress in the gym. So, by the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly why sleep is a non negotiable for fat loss, muscle building, high performance overall, and how to optimize it to start seeing better results almost immediately. One of the first things to break down is how sleep directly regulates the hormones that control hunger, your recovery, and your metabolism, as well as your performance. So, if you've ever had a terrible night's sleep, I had one quite recently, just turned 21, went out, got like 5 hours of sleep. Let's just say the Whoop score was not looking too hot that day. But that morning, or that day, my cravings went through the roof. You'll be far more likely to want junk food. And that's because when you're sleep deprived, ghrelin, which is the hormone that stimulates hunger, that goes up. And at the same time, leptin, the hormone that signals your satiety, you feel full, goes down. Result being, you're hungrier, you eat more, and your ability to feel satisfied after eating a meal, not well regulated. So that alone can make adherence to a fat loss phase much harder itself. But sleep restriction also increases insulin resilience. That makes your body less efficient at handling carbs. So instead of shuttling glucose in your muscle, which is what you want, your body starts to store it as fat, particularly in some cases visceral fat. And over time, that's going to lead to elevated blood sugar, stubborn body fat, and even metabolic dysfunction if it's chronic. Then we got cortisol. So when you don't sleep enough, cortisol levels rise, and not just in the morning when they should. You want cortisol to rise in the morning, then follow its natural curve. So that'll look like a spike in the morning, then a taper off in the evening. But chronically elevated cortisol, that's what leads to muscle breakdown, far worse recovery, greater fat storage. People notice, especially around the abdomen. And it also suppresses testosterone when chronically elevated, which is definitely not conducive to your gains, nor your ability to lose body fat or maintain metabolic health and performance. So we can actually see this in the research done on how sleep affects what and how much you eat. For example, after even one night of poor sleep, your brain's reward centers become hypersensitive to food cues, especially for high sugar, high fat foods, because our brain, it wants quick energy and the dopamine associated with it. And the fastest way to get that is through calorie dense, hyper palatable foods. So you walk into your normal coffee shop one morning to grab your usual coffee. Of course, they got the pastries all nicely laid out. Normally, you wouldn't bat an eye. But you got 5 hours of sleep last night. You start convincing yourself, would one pastry really set me back? And try to fit it in your macros. And then part of this is due to your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision making, as well as impulse control. It takes a hit from poor sleep as well. So not only are cravings higher, but your ability to say no also compromised. And then you start convincing yourself, and you're having that internal mental battle that usually wouldn't occur. And that 1-2 combo, for most people, unless you're really disciplined and follow like a meal plan and you're super on it, that'll easily lead to more snacking, more late night eating, more total overall calories consumed throughout the day. Sometimes without you even realizing it, unless you like I said, diligently track your food or follow a meal plan. Which in that case, you may still be able to stay locked in. You're just making the process much harder for yourself, especially if you're in a fat loss phase. And there's even research that shows people do consume an extra 300 to 500 calories after just one night of sleep restriction. So most of that also coming from, like I said, foods in high in sugar and ultra processed foods. And to make it even worse, sleep deprived individuals are more likely to skip the workout entirely. You're just feeling like shit. You're not going to the gym that day, or quite obviously underperform in the gym. Meaning, well, if you don't go, less energy expended overall. If you underperform, you're not going to be stimulating progressive overload and building muscle. So it is quite the vicious cycle. Poor sleep leads to poor food choices, and then lower energy output as well, which leads to more fat gain, which can further disrupt sleep, especially if you get to the point, likely not anybody listening to this podcast, but if sleep apnea becomes a factor as well. So essentially, to break that cycle, gotta treat sleep like you would your macros or your training. It needs to be prioritized. Now, even though all of that will have an impact on our physique development, let's say fat loss is one side of the coin and muscle growth is the other, sleep essential for both. So we can start with training performance. When you're well rested, you're going to move better. Your reaction time improves, your coordination is better, strength output is higher, your motivation to train is higher, and you're much more likely to push both intensity and volume in the gym. Obviously, both critical for hypertrophy. But the real benefits of sleep happens after training. Deep sleep, particularly slow wave sleep, is when the body produces the most growth hormone. This is the anabolic window your body uses to repair muscle tissue, synthesize new proteins, restore your nervous system, which is another side we'll get to. So if you're cutting sleep short, you're cutting short one of your body's most powerful muscle building tools, not to mention testosterone. And one study found that just 1 week of sleep reduction, sleeping only 5 hours per night, led to a 10 to 15% drop in testosterone levels. And that's going to impact not only your muscle growth, but your energy, your mood, libido, overall metabolic health as well. So basically, sleep well, you're going to feel well, you're going to train well, you're going to eat well, you're going to perform well, and you're going to grow well. And it's also not only about your muscles repairing, it's about the nervous system as well. Because high volume or high intensity training takes a hit on your central nervous system. And if you're not sleeping well, your CNS doesn't fully recover. And that's when fatigue can build up and you're no longer able to progress your training due to systemic fatigue. Your fat loss, if you're in a fat loss phase, will likely stall. You're going to feel more fatigued. You'll notice motivation to train is down and basically not conducive to the gains by any means. Now, other than recovery, sleep also plays a massive role in your stress response, as well as your metabolic flexibility, which is your body's ability to efficiently switch between burning carbs and fat for fuel, depending on the situation. And this adaptability is very important for performance, body composition, not to mention overall health. But when we're in a situation where sleep is not on point or detrimental, our circadian rhythm gets thrown off, which basically governs not just your sleep-wake cycles, but your metabolic and hormonal rhythms as well. And if that internal clock, that 24-hour clock, is out of sync, your ability to burn fat when fasted or utilize carbs when fed takes a hit. Then you add elevated cortisol to that, again, a result of sleep loss, and you create the perfect storm for metabolic dysfunction, or you're just not going to be seeing the results you could see out of your muscle growth phase or fat loss phase. And cortisol also makes your body hold on to fat. It raises your blood sugar, suppresses your thyroid hormones. That means a slower metabolism, more fatigue, and of course, worse recovery. Then, of course, we haven't even touched on the mental side of poor sleep, because when you're underslept, your tolerance to stress, your stress resilience takes a hit. So you're going to become much more reactive to things, let's say, that wouldn't really stress you out, all of a sudden start stressing you out a little bit. You're going to become less focused, less resilience, which of course is going to bleed into your training consistency, your ability to stick to a meal plan, and even your belief in your ability to keep going, your motivation. So if you want to transform your physique, your performance, and your health, you can be doing everything else right. You could be hitting your macros, you could be training hard, you could taking all the right subs, but if your sleep is not on point, your results will always be capped and it will hold you back significantly, because sleep regulates every major system tied to transformation. Your hormones, your appetite, your recovery, your metabolism, your motivation, and your performance. So it's not a luxury. You don't just go to bed when you feel like it, wake up when you feel like it. You got to treat it like it's part of your plan, because your plan working depends on how good you sleep. So I hope I've convinced you to sleep like it's your job, which, to be honest, it's not that hard. It just takes some level of effort and discipline to follow the 5 steps I'm going to run you through. First, and these are very easy, going to bed and waking up at the same time, which will be the biggest lever by far. Then, just like Dr. Huberman's always saying, as soon as you wake up, get out, see that morning sun. It's about to be winter here, unfortunately, soon, like a couple months. So even now, when I wake up, it's still dark, which is unfortunate. So I already got 10,000 lux of light, and I think that would be a great investment. Third, limiting blue light and screen time late at night, or just invest in a quality pair of blue light glasses, which is what I like to do because I'm personally not gonna read or meditate pre-bed. I'm not that type of guy. I quite like watching my shows, etc. I watched the UFC fights last weekend. Did have the blue light glasses on. Fourth, optimize your sleep environment. I like to think of it like creating a bat cave. So get it as dark as you can get it, cool, around 65 Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius, and then quiet. So if you're living in a busy area, this is where like white noise can come in from a fan. You could use earplugs. Darkness is also a big one. So even little lights like those little LEDs on your TV, or if you have an alarm clock that's bright, that will impact your sleep. So cover those up, or just get a good eye mask or sleep mask if you want to. And fifth, cut caffeine off at 2 p.m. the latest. Ideally, 12 p.m. And my God, you do those things, watch your physique outcomes, your mood, your energy, your performance, your overall quality of life completely change, because when your sleep is optimized, literally everything else becomes 10 times easier. So that is a wrap on today's episode. We went over some of the detrimental outcomes of poor sleep, basically just to convince you to lock in on your sleep, and then 5 simple things you can do starting today to get your sleep moving in the right direction that'll take care of 90% of it. Didn't include your eating your last meal at least 3 hours before bed, but just don't have a big meal before bed and you'll be chilling. So appreciate you for watching. If you want 30 days of free advice, tips to fast track your ability to build muscle, drop body fat, have more energy, if you want 2 free training plans, your nutrition, more specifically your exact macros set up for you, much more to transform your physique, health, and performance, you can click the first link in the description. And for coaching, as well as discount codes on the supplements I use, those links are also in the description as well. Appreciate you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.